I'm 34 years old and my name is Christina. Michael, my 30-year-old spouse, and I have been living in silence and tranquilly. When I was 24, a buddy introduced us, and 3 years later we were married. It's been 7 years since we got married. Despite not having kids, we have been living a quite contented life. But one day my sister Hannah, who is 27 years old, called me. "Christina, please, can I stay at your house for a while?" Her voice was tearful as she asked. As I listened to her narrative, I discovered that she had caused problems at work and ended up abandoning her position after splitting from her fiancé. There was nowhere else for her to go. "All right, you can stay with us for a while," I replied. I couldn't just leave her alone as a family. Michael, my husband, easily concurred as well, stating, "Of course it's okay." However, I was already experiencing some internal discomfort at that moment. The day my sister, Hannah, moved into our house, she displayed an uncharacteristic cheerfulness for someone who had just lost a lover. "I knew it. Your house is lovely. It's like a hotel," she exclaimed, sitting boldly on the living room sofa and elegantly sipping tea. I smiled wryly to myself and thought, well, it's just for a little while. However, her behavior gradually changed. First, it was her demeanor. Initially, she acted apologetic, but within a few days, she began to behave as if it was her own home. She would wake up later than me, and while I was making coffee in the kitchen, she would start ordering me around, saying, "Christina, get the milk." That wasn't all. She also became unusually close to my husband, Michael. "Michael, you're trying to become an actor, right? That's wonderful. I think men with dreams are really attractive," she said, her eyes sparkling. My husband, Michael, smiled, as if not entirely displeased. "Thank you, Hannah, but I'm still getting rejected at auditions," he replied. "That's not true. You'll definitely succeed soon. Talented people will eventually flourish." My sister, Hannah, exaggeratedly praised and encouraged him. I felt uneasy watching this scene. Of course, there was nothing wrong with my sister encouraging my husband, but there was a strange familiarity in her attitude. Moreover, my sister, Hannah, began to frequently bring up the topic of house ownership. "This house is really spacious and lovely, isn't it? Michael, did you find it?" she asked. "No, Christina decided on it. She handled all the contract procedures too," my husband, Michael, responded. "Oh." My sister, Hannah, fell silent as if pondering something, then quickly changed the topic. However, a strange unease began to grow inside me. From then on, she sought more opportunities to be alone with my husband, Michael. I had to leave the house for work during the day. During that time, she would watch movies or go to cafes with my husband, Michael. Today, I went to a new cafe with Michael. It was very stylish and the coffee was delicious, my sister Hannah excitedly told me when I got home. I maintained my composure, but I felt a slight thorn in my heart. A few weeks later, I noticed a subtle change in my husband Michael's attitude. "Christina, have you been cold to me lately?" he asked one night. "What? No, not at all," I replied. "Somehow, I feel like Hannah sees me better than you do," he said. I was shocked and angry at the same time. "Michael, have you forgotten that I'm the one supporting you?" My husband, Michael, was at a loss for words. He lived like a stay-at-home husband while trying to become an actor, and I continued to work to support his dream. Yet what was he talking about? That night, I sat alone in the living room, deep in thought. Since my sister Hannah had come, my relationship with my husband, Michael, seemed to have slowly changed. Was I truly supporting him, or was I just being conveniently used? I had no concrete evidence yet, but I couldn't have imagined then that this discomfort would eventually lead to a definitive betrayal. One day, I came home and immediately sensed an unusual atmosphere. The house was too quiet. Normally, I would hear the TV or my husband, Michael, and my sister, Hannah's laughter. But today there was nothing. As I entered the living room, my husband, Michael, and my sister, Hannah, were sitting on the sofa, smiling as if they had been waiting for me. "Welcome home, Christina. We were waiting to have dinner together." "I'm home. The house was strangely quiet, so I thought you both weren't here. Thanks for making dinner, I'm starving. After dinner, while I was cleaning up, my husband suddenly said, I want a divorce. What? What did you just say? My hand, holding a wine glass on the dining table, involuntarily stiffened. My husband Michael's face showed no sign of guilt. Instead, there was almost a relaxed smile. I've fallen out of love with you. I can't be with you anymore, Christina. His words were chillingly cold. I was shocked by the way he treated the time we had built together as a couple, as if it were nothing significant. Michael, is that really all? Have you really lost interest in me so easily? My husband, Michael, did not answer but instead looked over my shoulder at Hannah. At that moment, a bad feeling surged through me. My sister, Hannah, slowly stepped forward, a meaningful smile on her face, and said, Christina, I'm pregnant. What? You are pregnant? Yes, with Michael's child. There was a triumphant look in Hannah's eyes. This house belongs to Michael, so Christina, you should leave right away. Upon hearing Hannah's words, I took a deep breath. Anger surged within me, but more importantly, I had to think clearly. They clearly expected me to be upset and lose my composure, but I wouldn't let things go their way. I see. I slowly placed my wine glass on the table and faced them. This house is in my name, so shouldn't you two be the ones to leave? My sister Hannah's face changed color instantly. Her previously confident smile vanished, and her mouth twitched. Christina, what are you talking about? It's simple. This house is mine. Michael could live here because I allowed it. But if you're going to say such things, there's no need for that anymore. My sister Hannah glanced at my husband Michael for a moment, but he also looked perplexed. Apparently, both of them thought I would agree to the divorce without any fuss. You don't own anything anymore, my sister Hannah persisted. It's obvious you'll struggle financially without Michael. You have no options. If you think so, that's naive. I quietly smiled. I have my own job, and I'm not as destitute as you think. Rather, it seems like you two might end up having more problems. My sister Hannah's face turned pale. My husband Michael, sensing my calm demeanor, frowned, now visibly worried. Christina, what are you trying to say? My husband Michael said in a low voice. It's simple. I'm just saying that I'm not as powerless as you think. I stood up and slowly left the room. As soon as I entered another room, I called my mother. Mom, there's something I need to tell you. I started speaking, my voice trembling over the phone. My mother's response was drawn out, but I quickly continued. Mom, Hannah and Michael were having an affair, and Hannah is pregnant. I struggled with my words, but it was a major issue I had to convey. After a moment of silence, my mother finally spoke. That's really terrible. What are you going to do now? Thought. I detected surprise and concern in my mother's voice, but there was a calmness there too. I don't know what to do. I can't understand how this happened. I desperately held back the tears welling up inside me. What should we do as a family? After a moment of silence, my mother's reply was cold. Why don't you just get a divorce? That seems the quickest solution. Her words were completely different from the help I was seeking. Her voice seemed emotionally detached, and I felt her words pierce me. Divorce. I was startled and my voice shook. Mom, why would you say something so cold? But if Hannah is pregnant, isn't divorce the only option? My mother stated matter-of-factly, seemingly indifferent to my reaction. It was as if she prioritized a practical solution over my feelings and our family bonds. In that moment, I felt completely betrayed. The expectation that my mother would support me crumbled, and a huge void formed in my heart. The coldness was as unbearable as my husband's betrayal, for me, who had believed in the bonds of our family. The next day, I accidentally learned a secret about my husband, Michael. Late at night, I saw him on the phone in his study and stopped, curious. The door was slightly open, and a low voice leaked out. As I casually listened, I heard unexpected words. I told Christina about the divorce like you said, Mother, but it doesn't seem like she'll accept it easily. What should I do, Mother? He said. I felt my whole body freeze. My husband, Michael, was talking to my mother. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but I decided to listen more intently. My husband, Michael, was saying something in response, and then I was shocked by his next words. I was able to stay at home full-time because of your support. I tried to repay that kindness. At that moment I was taken aback. He must have believed all this time that he was receiving support from my parents. However, in reality, it was undoubtedly my earnings that supported our household. I remembered how desperately I had worked. It was me who supported my husband Michael's dreams and his lifestyle. On another day, I heard a shocking story from a friend. My husband Michael and I shared many mutual friends, and one of them told me something unbelievable. Michael has been saying, Christina's family is wealthy, so even if I remarry Hannah, I can maintain the same affluent lifestyle. I was stunned by this revelation. A chain of betrayals and misunderstandings. I stood frozen, feeling everything crumbling around me. The divorce was my mother's strategy, and my husband, Michael, misunderstanding that he had financial support from my parents, followed her lead and brought up divorce. My mind was made up. There was no need to endure this life any longer. I took a deep breath, calming my heart. Then I told myself, let go of everything and be free. There was no hesitation in my heart. There was no longer any reason to continue my marriage with my husband, Michael. That weekend I called Michael and my sister, Hannah, to the living room. They exchanged awkward glances but also seemed somewhat defiant. I'm thinking of divorcing Michael, but I will be asking for compensation, so be prepared, I said calmly. My sister, Hannah, immediately reacted. That's terrible. Just what? I snapped coldly. What do you mean just? After having an affair with my husband? My sister, Hannah, shut her mouth. Michael sighed irritably and said, there's no need to pay compensation. Hannah and I love each other. Scoff. Love each other. Do as you please, but you'll pay the price. Also, this house is mine. Leave immediately. Michael's face contorted. Don't joke. Where are we supposed to go? I don't care. You two are in love, right? Then you can manage anywhere. My sister, Hannah, anxiously grabbed Michael's arm. Michael. Michael glared at me, but he seemed to understand that he had no legal ground. After a moment of silence, he stood up with a click of his tongue. That's fine. We'll leave. My sister Hannah, still wanting to resist, said tearfully, Christina, please. Please. I looked down at her coldly. After destroying my family, what are you asking for now? My sister Hannah had nothing to say and looked down. Eventually, the two reluctantly packed their bags and left the house. They had nowhere to go and ended up temporarily staying at a friend's house of Michael's. But I didn't care anymore. I had finally driven them out of my life. As I proceeded with the divorce, my mother called me. She sounded somewhat cheerful and detached as usual. Christina, I heard you're getting a divorce. That's good, she said too casually. I was stunned by her flippant tone. She seemed to accept it as the natural course of events, showing no concern for my feelings. A mix of anger and sadness welled up in me, but I continued the conversation calmly. Since my sister Hannah and my ex-husband had an affair, I intend to claim compensation, I said. My mother sounded a bit surprised and then chuckled lightly. Michael is an actor, right? He has a decent income, so claiming compensation will easily solve things. You don't need to take money unnecessarily. If Hannah and the baby can live happily, that's enough. At that moment, I realized my mother did not understand Michael's actual financial situation at all. Being an actor didn't necessarily mean having wealth. Besides, the issue was not about money, but about the responsibility for the betrayal by my husband and sister. My mother's attitude of, if there's money, there's no problem, left me speechless. Mom, are you serious? Her words seemed to imply that my feelings didn't matter. She was prioritizing my sister's future stability and looking forward to the birth of her grandchild. That was my mother's true sentiment. I can't simply accept this. This isn't just a divorce, I've been betrayed, I said. But my mother's attitude didn't change. I sighed deeply and moved the phone away from my ear. My mother was still saying something, but I couldn't bring myself to listen any longer. I was no longer in doubt. With the anger of being betrayed by my husband and the sadness of having no allies in my family, I resolved to exact thorough revenge. A few weeks later, I received an unexpected call from my friend, Jocelyn. She wanted to meet and talk, so we arranged to meet at a cafe. As I sipped my coffee, I intently waited for Jocelyn to speak. She was the wife of a friend of Michael's, the one he and my sister Hannah were currently staying with, and she had known me for some time. Placing her coffee cup down gently, Jocelyn began to speak with a serious look. "Christina, I'm going to tell you the truth about Michael and Hannah." Seeing me slightly furrow my brow, Jocelyn chose her words carefully. "I hesitated about whether to tell you, but I think it's better if you know." After taking a deep breath, she quietly began. "At first, I had no suspicions. Michael and Hannah started staying at our place, and everything seemed normal for a while. But little by little, I began to feel something was off. Off. I looked into Jocelyn's eyes. It's Hannah's behavior. She was drinking wine, calmly and repeatedly. At first I thought it might just be a one-off, but a pregnant woman wouldn't do that, right? Also, there were no signs she was going for any prenatal checkups. Clenched my fist. Then Jocelyn continued with a worried look. "One evening my husband and I discussed it and decided to ask Michael directly, 'Is Hannah really pregnant?' Then Michael, he looked really flustered for a moment. But after that, as he thought back on Hannah's actions, he started to notice several inconsistencies." Jocelyn gripped her coffee cup tightly and continued quietly. "So, during dinner one evening, Michael directly asked Hannah, 'I'll come with you to your next checkup.' Then she started dodging his eyes, trying to evade the question. Evade? Yes. When was it? I need to check my schedule, she kept saying, not really answering. And when Michael pressed, 'You are really pregnant, right?' Hannah suddenly got angry. 'Didn't I tell you I am?' As if she was trying to deceive him. Jocelyn's voice trembled slightly. But by then Michael had realized. So he forced her to go to the hospital. I remained silent, staring into my cup of coffee. Anger and sadness swirled in my head, and the result? Jocelyn shook her head slightly. "Ultimately, Hannah wasn't pregnant at all," she said with a sigh. I quietly waited for her to continue. "They've been arguing ever since they came back from the hospital. They were so heated that they didn't even notice I was there." Jocelyn frowned as if recalling the atmosphere of that moment. "Enough already," Hannah shouted. I'd never seen her like that before. It was as if she was convincing herself. "All I wanted was to get married, Michael. I just wanted to marry you." I listened in silence, feeling a slow burn of rage building inside me. Michael just stared at her in disbelief. "Why would you lie about being pregnant?" His voice was trembling. "And what did Hannah say?" he asked. Jocelyn lowered her eyes and continued quietly. "My sister and Michael couldn't have children, right?" she said as if it was a matter of fact. When Michael pressed her, "So what?" she replied. "So I thought if I said I was pregnant, Michael would easily leave my sister." I clenched my hand. "That's despicable." "Yes, it is." But at that moment, Hannah completely lost her composure. But in the end, everything backfired, didn't it? She muttered with a vacant look. Jocelyn shook her head bitterly. Hearing that, Michael completely lost it. "It's your fault. I'm being sued for compensation, and I've lost my home because of you," he yelled, hitting the living room wall hard. Michael did. I'd never seen him like that before. He always acted so composed. But he couldn't hold back his emotions anymore. "It's all because of your lies. You pay for it. Isn't your family wealthy anyway? He confronted her. I smirked ironically. Typical of Michael. In the end, it's all about money. I can't believe it. Jocelyn looked sad. Yes. But then Hannah suddenly went quiet. So you wanted to marry me just for the money? She said with a cold look. Jocelyn traced her coffee cup with her finger as she continued. Michael twisted his face in irritation. Yes. I decided to marry you because your family was wealthy. I wanted a stable life. What's wrong with that? He retorted. That is disgusting, I said dismissively. Hannah just chuckled. So all those I love yous were lies? She asked. But Michael bluntly replied. That's just words. Look at the reality. Then Hannah suddenly laughed, breathing out a small sigh. Truly despicable. But let me tell you something. My family doesn't have any money. Jocelyn continued her story in a matter-of-fact tone. The color drained from Michael's face. Hannah coldly laughed. If you were after money, it was wrong from the start. I almost burst out laughing. In the end, they both got what they deserved. Jocelyn nodded. Haha, exactly. Their relationship is completely broken now. Hannah stayed with us, but we've reached our limit. And I finally told her, you need to leave. Jocelyn shrugged with a wry smile. So they might be wandering the streets by now. I sipped my cold coffee and smiled quietly. Serves them right. Jocelyn seemed a bit taken aback but soon sighed. Christina, what are you going to do? I slowly set down my cup and looked straight into Jocelyn's eyes. It's decided. My voice filled with anger and determination. Jocelyn, thank you for telling me. Jocelyn looked at me anxiously but said nothing. I was somewhat curious about how my sister Hannah was getting by after being thrown out of the house, but it was all her responsibility, and it no longer had anything to do with me. She must be seeking help from our parents. Sure enough, the next day, I received a call from them. Christina, we've heard from Hannah. We understand why you can't forgive your sister, but you two are siblings. Can't you reconcile somehow? My father pleaded. I didn't answer right away. Then my mother took the phone. Christina, we're family. Let's forget the past and start over. Hannah is remorseful, she said, her voice desperate. But it resonated hollowly with me. Mom, when I was suffering, you didn't protect me. And now you say we're family. So just forget the past. Please, Christina, please. It's too late, Mom. I rejected my parents' plea. Every time I recalled how hurt and alone I had been, their words felt empty. When I was betrayed, my parents never supported me, not even once. Now, to hear them say convenient things was more than I could accept. Forgiving not only my sister but also my parents' betrayal was not something I could easily do. I learned from relatives that my sister Hannah had eventually returned to our parents' house. According to them, my parents had reluctantly accepted her. They had even told their friends and relatives about the expected grandchild. Now that everyone knew the truth, that it had all been a lie, my sister Hannah faced criticism from all sides. My mother complained that my sister Hannah had embarrassed them terribly, and at family gatherings, my parents felt uncomfortable. Meanwhile, I finalized my divorce and sold the house where I had lived for many years, deciding to start a new life. I prioritized taking care of myself and moving beyond the past pains. By then, Michael too had lost everything. Jobless, chased by compensation payments, and nearly broke. Michael and my sister Hannah were both left in a desolate loneliness of their own making. Quietly smiling, I murmured, "That's the path you chose." Having cut ties with the past, I now looked forward to a future filled with hope and love.